everyone to the program. Now we begin with the Supreme Court sacking the All Progressives Congress in Zamfara State from the 2019 elections and declaring that votes cast for the party in the 2019 election are wasted ones. In a lead judgment, Justice Adamu Galunje dismissed an appeal filed by the APC and held that the appeal court in Sokoto was right when it agreed with the respondents that there was no primary in Zamfara. He ruled that for the avoidance of doubt, a party that has no candidate cannot be said to have won an election. Consequently, the party with the highest number of votes cast at the election outside of the APC is the winner of the election. Well, yet another decision of the Supreme Court was delivered today on the appeal filed by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate challenging the election of Governor Kayode Fayemi. The Supreme Court held that the appeal is unmeritorious. The judge noted that the two courts below are concurrent in their findings, and it is only where the appellant has established in laws and facts a breach of the law that this court can decide otherwise. Well, the court affirmed the judgment of both the tribunal and the appeal court and dismissed the appeal of the People's Democratic Party. Now we turn to our correspondent on those two cases. We'll be talking to Amaka Okafor much later with regards to the decision at the Supreme Court with regards to what we know. But let's take you to another court case where an Abuja High Court presided over by Justice Dan Lami has fixed the 31st of May 2019 for the judgment in a suit filed by Mr. Tochi Michael, accusing the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Mohammed, of age falsification. Now, Justice Dan Lami said he fixed the date following the failure of the plaintiff and his counsel to appear before the court after filing their processes. In the originating summons filed before the court in April, the petitioner alleged that the CJN deliberately falsified his date of birth. Mr. Michael alleged that the CJN falsified that date from December 31, 1950, as contained in all his official records, including that of the West African Examination Council, to December 31, 1953 upon his appointment as a judicial officer. The petitioner in the originating summons is praying the court to determine whether such act of the CJN does not constitute a criminal act of perjury, falsification and forgery. And ahead of next week's inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday, May the 29th, for a second term in office, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, has led members of the Presidential Inauguration Committee to inspect the venue of the presidential inauguration in Abuja. Members of the delegation include the Minister of Information and Culture, the Minister of Defense, the President's advisors, and other top government officials. The federal government had earlier announced that the inauguration ceremony will be a low-key event, but will be a celebration celebrating Democracy Day, which has been announced to be the new public holiday celebrated on June the 12th. A bit more to some more deep politics now. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, he has been speaking on plans by those he has described as anti-democratic elements to contrive skirmishes aimed at smearing his personality. In a statement by his media advisor, Paul Ibe, to the former vice president, said it is obvious that a plot is being orchestrated by some agents of evil to stage managed pockets of trouble targeted at attacking the reputation of himself, Mr. Abubakar. Now, the statement reads, quote, "By the merit of what is beginning to unfold, there are plans to create some upset across the country whereby alleged perpetrators of such crimes will engage in phantom names dropping of Atiku Abubakar and some senior personalities in the People's Democratic Party," end of quote. The PDP presidential candidate is calling on the federal government to be awake to its responsibilities of providing security and ensuring peace, and also to desist from the actions and utterances that are capable of exposing the nation's fault lines. In the final analysis, the former vice president is demanding an apology from the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, and in another breath, his arrest for falsely accusing him and his party, the PDP, of planning to upstage the government. The Vice President, Professor Osinbajo, is asking governors not to stoke fires of ethnicity and religious conflicts through their unguarded utterances. Professor Osinbajo explains that the governors have a duty to protect the vulnerable and not advance negative political agenda. He was speaking during a valedictory meeting of the National Economic Council at the State House. Our correspondent, Gloria Mezuke, has more.
The National Economic Council is meeting again. This time, it's their last. All the members, including the 36 governors, are present. The Vice President and Chairman of the Council, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, presides over the valedictory session.
The special net that we had, the retreat we had.
The Council launched an 80-page legacy document containing 173 resolutions reached to address issues of national importance.
That we have positively contributed.
And when it was time for reflections, the governors bared their minds.
We've done very well in debating and articulating policies, but implementation has not been as robust as the process of policy formulation and resolution.
I want you to stand with one another, to stand by one another, to stand for the Nigerian nation.
Each governor from the 6 geopolitical zones, including former governor of Osun State, who is invited, spoke.
I look at my left and look at my right. Even the worst of them, like the Oshimoles and Erufais. Even within this, I still feel as members of family. And this point I've mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I do not know why you share one thing in common with them. May I request you to distance yourself henceforth from them?
According to the outgoing chairman of the Nigeria's Governors Forum, the country needs more planning to succeed.
If we did not plan, Mr. Chairman, we are sitting on the time bomb. And that's the truth. All what is happening, more especially where I came from, is the reflection of what is going on in our economy. Mr. Chairman, we have a very, very gigantic job, and we have to stand up now.
As leaders, we have a duty to keep the peace.
The Vice President further asked outgoing governors not to rest on their oars.
Frequently, our political elite, sometimes out of advancing political agendas or simply seeking relevance, recklessly stoke the fires of ethnicity and religious conflict. I think we must, as leaders, who have a duty to keep the peace and welfare of our state.
Amidst the challenges talked about here, the outgoing governors have been asked to use the experiences to influence change for a better society in the next few years. From the presidential villa, Gloria Mezuke, Channels Television News.
The governor of Imo State, Mr. Rochas Okorocha, is disappointed that INEC has not presented him with a certificate of return and what he calls the harassment by the EFCC and the issues. He was speaking when President Muhammadu Buhari, who was represented by his vice, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, visited the state to inaugurate projects. He also refuted the impression that his government had done nothing in its 8 years of governance, saying there are over 1,000 projects embarked upon by his administration. But let's now link up with our correspondent, Itope Kuteyi, who has been reporting live for us from Owerri, the Imo State capital, on some of the happenings as the preparations are like ahead of next week's handover ceremony. Itope.
Good afternoon, Millicent, and welcome to Owerri, the Imo State capital. Indeed, it's been a busy time in the last 1 or 2 weeks for the outgoing government in Imo State, talking about the several commissioning of projects in Imo State executed by the Okorocha-led administration in Imo State. And in the span of 1 week, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has been in Imo State to commission several projects, one in his capacity as the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the other he was representing his boss, President Muhammadu Buhari. And talking about issues raised by the Imo State Governor, Rochas Okorocha, on the case of the EFCC and the case of the certificate of return. You could recall recently the governor approached the Federal High Court in Abuja seeking for protection of his fundamental human rights. He was alleging that his political opponents are the ones instigating the EFCC against him. And on the issue of the certificate of return, he has also approached the court seeking that INEC should release his certificate of return. And since these two cases are in court, we might not be able to speak more on this.